Hello. Welcome to Thrive Alive. I am your host, Nurse Jasmine, and today we will be talking about Black representation in the healthcare field or lack thereof, and the effects it has on Black men's health. Today we will be joined by Dr. Aaron Franklin. Hi, Dr. Franklin. Thank
Hey,
you for joining us.
thank you for having me.
Dr. Aaron Franklin is a doctor of nursing practice and a senior program manager in HR at Rush University Medical Center. As a New Orleans native and present Chicago resident, Dr. Franklin is currently adjunct faculty in Rush University's College of Nursing and is the faculty advisor for the Men in Nursing group. In 2022, Dr. Franklin was inducted into the Board of Directors of the American Association for Men in Nursing, and he currently serves as a member of the Diversity Leadership Council for the Rush System of Health. Ultimately, Dr. Franklin has a passion for removing cultural barriers to create careers in healthcare. Again, Dr. Franklin, so happy to have you, especially as a fellow nurse.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Yes, this is going to be a great conversation. I'm just going to jump right in and ask you the first question. We want to get to know you a little bit better. So, first question is, why did you enter the nursing field?
Yeah, that's the infamous question. I always when I'm asked that question, I always think back because I actually wanted to be a nurse since my youth. I was in the single digits. My dad, and I think in a lot of folks could probably agree that in the Black community, like we have this want and urge to please our dads, and so I remember his response to that, like he was almost disappointed. Like, why would you want to be a nurse? And this is in the 90s. Why would you want to be a nurse? Like, men aren't nurses. And I remember feeling like, wow, well, maybe that's not the best position. So I changed my aspiration to wanting to become a doctor. Fast forward, literally my family's been calling me Dr. Franklin since I was a child. And
That's
so
cool.
I remember my mom put me in classes and courses catered towards people wanting to go into healthcare in high school. I've been taking classes. Started volunteering when I was 15, got my CNA my 12th grade year.
Cool.
And it honestly wasn't until I started working at the bedside with nurses that came back to where I'm like, hey, I actually wanted to be a nurse. I started pre-med in college, and I think it was after my first year, I was like, I'm changing my major to nursing because that feels like where my heart is. It feels right. And so that was the initial drive that got me into wanting to be a nurse, and then the reminder of that I really want to be a nurse to help people. And that's always been the start of why I want to be a nurse.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's very interesting that you said how Black fathers have this sort of influence
Right.
on us, especially being a male.
Right.
I mean, my dad has an influence on me, but in a different light.
Right.
So kudos to you for standing up for yourself and saying, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
It just felt right. It's kind of one of those things, and I think as we get older, we tend to listen to that voice that's telling us to do something. Then I was like in my teens, and I was like, I really want to do this. I'm probably gonna, I felt like I would not make him happy about it, but it was something I really want to do. But of course, years has passed. I've graduated. My dad's super supportive of me being a nurse. Even getting a degree was like gold for our family. So that was something that like back then, and I know that a lot of folks experience that now, where like in the family maybe it's not seen or perceived well to be a nurse.
Yeah, that's good. And you actually did become a doctor.
I became a doctor.
Let's just put that on the table
during
real quick.
my DMP graduation, my mom and dad had it. It was actually in New Orleans because I graduated from Rush, but we're in the pandemic, so we actually made a whole graduation suite for my family to come in.
So cool.
Had a podium and everything, and I remember telling them, I'm like, y'all, I'm a doctor.
Right.
So it was cool to even, to have that feeling about like the experience with my dad, and then like to come back and like, I'm Dr. Franklin, Dad.
Yes.
What's up? What you got?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next question. That's so good. What was your experience with Black healthcare professionals before and after entering the field.
Yeah, okay. That's a good one. When I first entered the field, and I mentioned I started like super early,
You were
volunteering.
15,
Yeah, I was
right?
15 when I first started volunteering. I was probably like 13, 14 when I started first taking classes. But I remember going into the hospital and not seeing people that looked like me in like professional roles, like physicians, nurses. We assumed a lot of the CNA roles. Like I had other CNAs who were black, housekeeping,
Maybe
food
the cooks.
services.
Yep, yep.
Those were where we were. And I think early on I already knew that, wow, I'm kind of getting into uncharted territory. After entering nursing, I actually started my career at Rush as a registered nurse. And so I've been here almost 10 years. So that's why this has been my whole entire nursing career. And super important part of that story is that Dr. Fred Brown, he was the hiring manager on the orthopedic unit. And I mean, for somebody like me, I'm coming to a big city. I don't know nothing about Chicago.
Right.
I'm
A huge
interviewing.
hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm interviewing with this man who I can identify with. He wasn't militant. He's like you said, I feel like I'm silly and goofy. I would say so I felt like that's who he was. And so I'm like, okay, he has his DNP in systems leadership. He's a unit director. He's not like, stuck up like a lot of the leaders that I've seen in my earlier parts of nursing. But and honestly, that exposure became everything for me. It was kind of like, I got you, brother. Like, I got you. 5 to 7 years later, 5 years later, I became a unit director. 7 years later, I finished with my DNP. And I always say to him, like this, you helped me realize that's something that I can, become. And honestly, that's where my involvement with men in nursing kind of stemmed from, was getting that exposure and like having a goal to try to expose other folks to men working in nursing.
Yeah. So speaking of men in nursing, this group that you pretty much created, right?
Yeah, so I would say I revitalized the group.
Okay.
We have a long history of wanting to do things for men in nursing. I'm not sure if there was like an organization tied, but I know that the instructors were wanting to do stuff for men in nursing. Luther Chrisman, he's one of the first um, College of Nursing male dean, I think back in like 1972.
Okay.
So it was a lot of like trying to get more men into nursing. When I started my DNP program, I created a men in nursing group in alignment with the chapter of American Association for Men in Nursing. And I had another group, which you mentioned the video. There weren't many men in the program, but two out of three of the individuals opted to be a part of a mentorship with me.
Okay.
And so that group on that video, the two of them are in that video alongside other folks who have like come and joined us. And that's more of like, it's part of men in nursing, but it's like our affinity group. Because most of the people in the video are practicing nurses now. So we started in the college, and most of them were students, or they may have been somebody I hired when I worked as a unit director. So it's been cool to kind of see how much publicity that has gotten.
Yeah. And what's even like really cool to me, you talked about your experience with Dr. Brown.
Right.
And now you are the Dr. Brown for these guys.
Yes.
And you've watched them become nurses from students.
Right.
Like that's
it's
so
cool.
That's
I'm getting
so
chills
cool.
because honestly, it's something that you never think that you can create something or do something, but it's kind of one of those things where like somebody got to do it.
Right.
So it's cool watching them, they stress over their tests, and I'm like, look, that's normal. It's gonna be okay. And I was like, now y'all are practicing nurses. Remember y'all when y'all were students, and so I think it's cool for them to see themselves, and which is like see themselves in me, like I saw myself in Dr. Brown. And I think that has been one of my biggest like missions now. I'm like, I'm not a big social media buff type person, but I need to get out there. People need to be able to identify with me and see that, look, you can be a nurse too.
Yes. Yeah. Speaking of men in nursing and social media, we want to play your viral TikTok video.
Let's go.
So take a look.
Did you know that out of 4.2 million nurses in the U.S., Black nurses make up 6%, men 9.4%, and black men are statistically unrepresented. By having more black men in nursing, we can improve trust in healthcare for black male patients. This can reduce their mortality gap compared to white male patients by 19%. We need more diversity in healthcare. Our nurses at Rush have answered their call.
All right. So, next question. What is your current experience with Black representation in the medical field, specifically doctor-patient relationships?
Yeah, so I don't have specific stats on that because that's something I probably have to go into, like, getting that information from the leaders in those areas. But I think compared to what I've seen in the past, like I mentioned, I didn't see many black healthcare professionals. I do see a lot more folks starting to come through the pipelines, more specifically in like the schools. So we are academic medical center at Rush, and so I'm seeing a lot more black medical students and black nursing students, and that's exciting for me because it's making me think about, like, long term, we definitely are going to have some change with providers. Now, I think, just like I'm sure, depending on your location or where you are in cities or the population that exists, and if what type of organization it is, I guess that also depends on that. But I would say that my experience now has been, I've been seeing a lot more people coming through the pipeline and interested in the profession. So I think that is cool to kind of get them into the workforce.
Yeah, that's cool. You didn't see people like you.
Right.
You didn't see the table. You created the table.
Yeah.
You telling the students, pull up a chair.
Pull up a seat.
Yeah, pull up a seat.
Let's talk.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's change
and
this.
I'm all about, too, like, being my authentic self. And it took a while. And that's why I always tell, like, a lot of folks think they have everything in the beginning, or, they think they have everything. But, like, authenticity is like, I want to go into any environment and I want to feel like myself. So when I'm talking to these students, I'm telling them that I did not feel comfortable,
Right.
because I think when they start to go through those experiences, they feel like maybe I'm the only one, maybe it's not for me. So I think that's something that's super important to share. And I think that's also part of my mission, to be that voice and that anchor for those individuals.
I'm going to kind of veer off a little bit since you talked about being your authentic self.
Yeah.
You talked about before coming up, working in the healthcare field and not being able to wear your hair a certain way, have your ears pierced or show tattoos. I feel like, it was kind of the same for me. And I feel like from the time I finished nursing school to the time I was working on the floor, that had already changed.
Okay.
Like, even with like hair color and stuff like that. So I'm just curious to know what your personal experience has been.
So I went to school back in Texas for my bachelor's, and it was very strict. I always refer to nursing school as like boot camp. I had some of the best experience. Met some of my best friends I still connect to today. Graduated almost 10 years ago, December 2013. It'll be 10 years.
Wow.
Since I graduated. And I remember, as a young adult going into college, most of my friends, they're going out, everybody's growing dreads. Everybody, folks are getting tattoos now because they can do that. And
right, they grown now.
Everybody grown, everybody doing stuff. And I'm like, wow, I got, I had to keep my hair short, had to keep my face clear.
Up, yeah.
We wore white. It was off the chain.
Wow.
And so I think one of the message that especially now, one of our current president for Men in Nursing. So just to clarify, Men in Nursing is like for all. That's, and then we have the affinity group for Black Men in Nursing. But one of the president who's coming on this term is a Black male.
Okay.
And he has dreads.
Okay.
He's from South Side of Chicago.
Come on, brother.
And one of the things I've constantly told him was like, man, be yourself. Do not cut your dreads just because that's what, the scene appropriate. If you cut it when you want to cut it.
Right.
Don't allow other people to paint the picture. I think I'm from New Orleans, and so all of my brothers, they have strong New Orleans accents, Cajun accents, and I get it a lot more when I go home and I'm around them. But then for me, it was like going into the environment and felt like I had to acclimate and change and so yeah. So authenticity, I think, is important. That's why I'm like, I have to laugh, because I'm silly, or I'm just going to be like, bursting, or and I think people feel safe when they can be themselves. It's when you're putting your guard up that there's that unsafety, insecurity. It's not a good working environment. Things may not get communicated.
Right.
So any space that I go into, I try, whether that's school, the practicing field, when I'm hanging out, I try to be my 100% self because, that's the only thing that I really know how to be. Otherwise, I'd be pretending.
Right. And it's too much work.
It's too much work.
It's too hard.
It's hard.
You be exhausted by the time you get done just from talking.
You're like, who am I again?
Right.
Who am I? Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Be 100% me.
Yes.
That's all I can be.
And we need to, I think, like spaces like the profession of nursing has been like a cookie cutter space. And I think that's why folks haven't really felt like they can be themselves. And I think it's cool that we're at the space where, you can have tattoos and you can have your hair colored and you could have piercings as a nurse because that's how that's how you show up.
Right.
And there's going to be somebody who's going to identify with you.
Right. Right.
They will identify with you.
That is so true. When you go out in the world, this is what people have.
Right.
People have locks. People have tattoos. It's just, we got to get out of this old school way of thinking and just adapt. We have to be adaptable.
We have to.
Or else we suffer.
Right.
Which is why we're suffering now because we don't have a lot of Black men in nursing. We don't have a lot of Black physicians, and it's because of, not primarily because of that, but that's a huge reason. People don't see themselves.
There's a lot of opportunity that can be gained from it.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. All right, moving on. Have you ever experienced protocols? Well, we actually just touched on this. Have you ever experienced protocols that were not culturally inclusive?
Let's see. I know now there's a lot of work and a lot of organizations, especially after George Floyd, we're trying to make spaces, culturally appropriate and acceptable for everyone. I think I really feel like Rush University and the Medical Center has done a good job with, redefining policies and procedures. Honestly, those things need to be reviewed and changed
regularly,
like all the time, because the environment changes and the people who live in those environments changes, and we learn something else about a clinical illness that we didn't know about. So I think that's super important. I think, but what the big part that I'm super excited, and I got this opportunity as a student when I in the university, was being pulled into committees like to change certain policies, or even within the syllabus, the introduction. If there's anything in the syllabus that you may see that could be, not aligned culturally, please let us know, because we want, like, we're invested in changing and making it. So I think that makes me feel good at Rush, that there's the intent to change some of the long history of healthcare that we have.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's promising.
Yeah.
What's one thing you change about healthcare that you think would make Black men more comfortable with receiving care in clinical settings?
Yeah. For me, and that goes back to like representation. So I think increasing more Black men into nursing would do just that. I think it's no secret that, like, historically we have a lot of mistrust in healthcare. We think about the Tuskegee syphilis trials, where I think it was like 400 men. They were tested. They were studied. They had syphilis. They were given placebo pills when penicillin cured it. Like but they didn't tell them that. And so we've been subject to test trials like that, and then you go into all of the societal things that we've experienced just in general. It makes it hard, and as a kid, I remember growing up and hearing like, oh, I ain't going to no hospital.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm
Yes.
not, you know,
Yes.
your head has to be dang near hanging off
Right.
before you go to the hospital. And so I think that's the opportunity we have in our community to, when we get that first sign, we need to go. And I think that having providers who represent the community we serve, and that doesn't even have to just be Black. If you have many Asian folks, you want to make sure you have Asian providers who are able to translate or who are able to understand their lived experience so that they can provide better care. So I think the provider piece, increasing representation, letting folks see themselves, and then we can get past the trust piece. We can get down to like what we need to do. Because I've been everybody's cousins, brothers, nephews. I've been in rooms, people calling folks, oh my God, you would not believe this. My nurse is a Black man. You know, call it, you know, and I'm like, hey, you know, on FaceTime waving at people I don't know.
That
I'm
is
like,
too funny.
And it's cool because it always feel like family. You know, when I'm like, so so now we got to talk about your health.
Right.
Now that we done with all this playing.
Right.
Because I'm
now
down
that we
to play
established that we cousins.
Yeah, right.
Let's talk about why you're really here.
Right.
That is so good. I've had a lot of similar experiences. And one particular experience, I got report, and the nurse handing off the patient to me said he was angry and non-compliant and all this and that. So I'm thinking I'm about to walk into this room and get my head chewed off. And the patient, who was a Black man, he said, you know, they just not listening to me. That was it. And when I tell you, that was one of the most pleasant shifts I've had. He did not give me any pushback on anything. I explained everything to him, and it was fine. It was fine. So, you know, just having that comfort of, okay, here's somebody who understands me. Here's somebody who is going to listen to me, who's going to see me for who I am, who's going to explain things on a level that I need them explained. I mean, that just makes all the difference. All the difference.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's that's good. That's so good. Okay. All right. What is one thing you think could increase the number of Black men going into nursing?
Yeah, I feel like that is getting in front of you. Honestly, I was an op-ed fellow, and when I released this article early this year and during Black History Month, and we had to talk about like our legacy, right? And so that in that space, it made me for the first time really think about like, wow, what do I want to leave behind, right? Like what, and they had us think like 100 years from now, 50 years from now, 30, 20, like, and then what do you have to do? And I think the biggest thing is the youth are our future. And so not to give up on our, you know, the folks who are here now, but, you know, we talking about sustainability and also improving health, especially in Black communities. And so if we're getting into elementary schools, middle schools, high schools to let folks know early on that you could be a successful person in nursing, I honestly think that could change the whole infrastructure of folks wanting to get into careers. Because what I find that many folks start school, they may have a second career, they want to get into nursing. Or they may have been in the Army and then they come back, they were involved in medical stuff, I want to get into nursing. So it always seems late. It never feels that like it's an acceptable thing. And then I think growing up, you hear about like, oh, doctor, lawyer, you know, all of those positions where nursing isn't heavily talked about. But I think just sharing that one, generational wealth could be gained, you know, getting folks with degrees, decent salaries where they can have a sustainable life. They will also expose their families to nursing. Like it's like a ripple effect. So I think that's the piece where I'm thinking like the legacy piece and increasing representation and getting in front of youth is going to be extremely important as we go into the future.
That's real. That's good. And that's what you're doing. Even with we keep coming back to men in nursing,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
just such an amazing thing, which is why I keep bringing it up.
yeah.
But you getting people like these people are maybe fresh out of high school, going into college or going into nursing school. I remember being in college and changing my major a couple of times,
Yeah.
you know. So when you say youth, we talking about not just the kids, but even like at that 18-year-old
Right, right.
level, we're expected at 18 to decide what we want to do for the
The
rest
rest
of
of
our
our life,
lives.
man.
How
So much pressure.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I was so immature at 18.
Right,
Like, how can I make that decision? But if I see people
right.
that look like me in this specific area, then maybe, you know, I can better decide what I want to do. So,
Right. So a good question to ask, like community members, like what are your kids seeing people doing? Like, you know,
that part.
because these and the kids are smarter now. I'm like, God,
Yeah.
isn't she 2 years old? You know,
She
why
know
is
how to work the phone
she do
better than me.
everything, right? So I think that's why it's super important that we are like really getting kids exposed because they
Yes.
know more than we think they know.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
they know stuff.
That is so true.
And so, yeah, I think that's extremely important and needed.
That's good. That's good. All right. Coming up on our final question, maybe.
Okay. Okay.
What is the first step for someone ready to take better care of their health?
Ooh.
That's good, right?
That's good. Ooh. Okay. Because I feel like there's a lot of things that's kind of jumping into my mind. But I think I'm going to say first step would just do a scan of your situation. I think help for a lot of people, they just think like, oh, I have diabetes. But health is everything to me. It's everything.
Yeah.
It's your environment that you live in, the workplace that you have, the relationships that you have. All of that impacts everything. Your mental health, like all of that. So, am I working in the right space? Is it a good environment? How's the culture? Does it feel toxic? Does it, because that could lead to me having mental health.
Yeah.
Relationships you build. I think I talk a lot to individuals I'm mentoring because I had the same experience. People that you grew up with, some of them they won't stay on the ride with you as you continue. So if you want to do certain things, you may want to surround yourself with people who are doing it, or maybe people who are like positive in your perspective to help you achieve that. Because I think we have this habit of like trying to hold on to individuals who kind of make us feel weird about doing what we're doing, or kind of like, why? Oh, you have to go. Why are you going back to do that? Why are you going back to get your master's? I've had some of that. So your environment, that I think that impacts your health. Relationships, and then just in general, like health wise, I think just not being in denial. Like I think we do a good job with being in denial. I'm not seeing clear, but maybe it could be the weather change. It's like, no, you need to go get checked,
Right.
because something could really be going on. And I think what we see a lot of Black patients come in and it's like at the last minute.
Too late almost.
We think about finances, it's going to be extremely expensive to fix the problem now when you may have even had kind of had an inkling of this years ago. So I think the first, I guess, to really answer the question, just you have to be realistic and not be in denial about some things, and that's super important.
That's good, man. That is so good. That brings me to our resource. So the resource we created is just something called a basic metabolic panel. It is a group of blood tests used to determine how your organs are functioning. Healthcare providers use it as a routine test to help diagnose, screen for, and monitor certain health conditions. So the resource is a table, and it lists these common blood tests. You'll see the name of the test, you'll see the normal range, and then you'll see what abnormalities indicate. So this is just a general test that your doctor would usually get for you if you go in for like your yearly physical or something like that. And that can be found on our website. at AliveFaithNetwork.org/resources. Thank you again, Dr.
Yeah, of
Franklin.
course,
This
of
has
course.
been such a wonderful conversation. I hate to end it. I feel like I have so much more I want to
Yeah, we talk forever.
ask, but maybe we'll have Dr. Franklin back. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for joining us on Thrive Alive.